banished human pilot salvages an alien ship. It turns out to be sentient and stubborn. Cale Jarran had never imagined himself this far from home. The interstellar fleet had exiled him months ago, and now he drifted alone in the outer rim, in a patch of space so empty that even scanners seemed to sleep. He was a pilot with skill, some said genius. But his stubborn nature and tendency to argue with superiors had cost him everything. No friends, no fleet support, just him, his small personal shuttle, and the stars. The stars, he decided, were the only honest thing left in the universe. They did not lie. They did not argue. They did not betray. But honesty, Cale thought bitterly, was a small comfort when one was broke, hungry, and banned from civilized space. His shuttle, the Raven's Wing, hummed under him as he scoured the edge of a dying star system. Reports of abandoned wrecks reached him through whispered transmissions from other exiles and French traders. Every wreck promised parts, fuel, or sometimes something rare enough to fetch a good price. Cale's life depended on such finds. That day, a faint blip caught his attention. It was weak, almost lost in the background of cosmic noise, but it was different. It wasn't debris drifting aimlessly. It moved, slowly, purposefully. Cale squinted at the monitor. "What are you hiding, little ghost?" he muttered. The blip led him to an asteroid field on the edge of the system. Jagged rocks floating silently. Among the rocks, half buried in gray dust and ice, was the faint outline of a ship. At first glance, Cale thought it was human. Old, forgotten, lost to time. But as his shuttle drew closer, his heart sank with awe. This was no human design. The ship was sleek, almost alive in its shape. Its hull curved like a living thing, smooth, silver gray, with subtle ridges that caught the dim starlight. Small lights blinked across its surface, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Cale's breath caught. He had seen many derelict ships in his life, but none had a presence like this one. None had attitude. He landed cautiously on the asteroid's rough surface. The small gravity didn't bother him. He had trained for harsher environments. He suited up, activated his portable scanner, and approached the alien craft. It was silent. Too silent. Cale circled the ship, scanning for breaches, weak points, anything he could use to enter. Finally, he found a hatch on the underside. It was sealed but not locked, at least not in any conventional sense. He pried it open, and a hiss of pressurized air escaped, almost like the ship was exhaling after a long sleep. Inside, the ship's interior was even stranger. It was not metallic in the way human ships were. Surfaces seemed to flow subtly under his touch, panels shifting slightly when he tried to manipulate them. Lights danced across walls, reacting to his movements as if the ship was aware of him. Cale froze for a moment. His instinct screamed danger, but curiosity pushed him forward. "All right, old girl," he whispered. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding." He climbed into the cockpit, or what passed for one. The controls were unlike anything he had seen. No buttons, no joysticks, just smooth surfaces and glowing symbols. He touched one, and a holographic display appeared, floating in midair. Numbers, shapes, symbols, but none that made immediate sense. Cale frowned.
Oh, okay. Alien tech. Not exactly a problem.
Let's figure this out. Hours passed. He tried every method he knew. Force commands, interface probes, even physically manipulating the panels. But the ship resisted. Every time he tried to move a control, a nearby panel shifted, blocking him. Doors that had opened moments ago slammed shut. Lights blinked in patterns that seemed deliberate. Cale sat back in frustration. What the hell are you? An AI with attitude? Then it happened. A sensation, sudden and overwhelming, flooded his mind. Not words, not sound, but a thought, a presence, clear and undeniable. You are not ready. Cale froze. His pulse raced. The sensation faded as quickly as it came, leaving him staring at the cockpit, heart pounding.
What?
Did you just think at me? He asked aloud, though no one answered. The ship pulsed faintly in response, almost as if it was amused. Cale swallowed hard. He had heard stories of sentient ships, legends passed down by old pilots and fringe traders. Stories of AI that learned, that felt, that could refuse their pilots. But he had always thought they were exaggerations. Until now. He tried to speak again, testing the reaction.
Okay, listen.
I don't know who or what you are, but I need to get inside your systems. We can work together. You help me, I help you. Nothing. Cale sighed and leaned back, rubbing his eyes. I guess. Negotiation time, huh? The next hours were a strange dance. Cale would touch a control, and the ship would shift away. He would attempt to open a panel, and it would close on its own. Sometimes it pulsed gently under his hand, almost like a heartbeat. Other times, it flared bright, almost angry. Cale began to talk to it. At first it was commands and questions. Soon he found himself muttering apologies, coaxing it with patience. Hey, I just want to understand you. We can be partners. I can't do this alone. And slowly, very slowly, the ship responded. Panels would unlock for him. Symbols would shift to something readable. A control would react as if willing to be used. Not fully, but enough. Cale smiled, despite himself. Finally, I'm making progress. Our native success was followed by resistance. A door would shut mid-operation. A display would scramble. The ship was testing him, he realized. Testing his patience, his skill, maybe even his character. Cale felt a strange connection forming. The ship was more than metal and circuits. It was a mind, stubborn and proud, like a living creature. And it was judging him. The night, or what passed for night in the asteroid's faint light, dragged on. Cale had eaten nothing, slept nothing. He was entirely absorbed in the struggle. Yet he felt alive, more alive than he had since his banishment. For the first time, he had a purpose beyond survival. He had a challenge that demanded all his skill, all his creativity. Finally, as the system's dim sun began to rise over the horizon, something remarkable happened. A smooth corridor opened before him, leading to the ship's main core. The control systems aligned in a pattern he could understand. A soft hum filled the cabin, warm and inviting. Cale took a deep breath. All right, I think we can talk now. Then, without warning, the ship pulsed brighter than ever, and a voice, not mechanical, not spoken aloud, but felt, filled his mind. I am ready to see if you are worthy. Cale's eyes widened. Worthy? Of what? Of the ship? Of something greater. He did not know. But one thing was certain. He was no longer alone. The ship was alive, aware, and judging him. For the first time since his exile, Cale felt hope. Maybe this ship, stubborn as it was the key to something bigger. Something that could redeem him. Not to the fleet, not to anyone else, but to himself. And as he prepared to explore further, he realized the truth. This was not just a salvage mission anymore. This was the beginning of a partnership, and a test he might not yet be ready to pass. Cale leaned back in the cockpit, staring at the pulsing lights. All right, then. Let's see what you've got. The ship pulsed again, softer this time. Almost a nod. And somewhere deep inside its systems it waited for Cale to prove that humanity, stubborn, creative, and unpredictable, was worthy of trust. Cale had spent the night staring at the pulsing lights of the ship, trying to understand its strange behavior. By the time the dim light of the nearby star stretched across the asteroid, he was convinced of one thing. This ship was alive. Not alive like a crew or AI programmed to obey. It had thoughts, feelings, even moods. And those moods, Cale realized, could be frustratingly stubborn. He moved carefully through the corridor leading to the cockpit. The ship had opened it for him the night before, but Cale could feel the subtle resistance in its walls as he walked. It was as if it were aware of his every step, measuring him. All right. Kale said aloud, though the ship could probably hear him in ways he didn't yet understand. You want to test me? Fine. I'm ready. Let's talk. The controls hummed, lights flickered, and then a gentle vibration coursed through the deck. It was the ship's version of attention, Kale guessed. He sat in the cockpit, taking a deep breath. First things first, he said. I don't know your name. I don't even know if you can have a name, but I think we should have one for easier conversation. How about Sira? There was no response, not in words, but the lights dimmed slightly, then brightened. Kale interpreted it as a form of acknowledgement. Sira it is, then. Now listen. I need to understand how you work, how you move, and how we can cooperate. Are you willing to do that? The cockpit seemed to pulse gently, like a slow nod. Kale smiled. Progress. For the next several hours, Kale attempted what he called first contact diplomacy. Every command he issued was met with subtle resistance. Buttons would not respond. Displays would scramble, corridors would slightly shift out of reach. Kale learned quickly that brute force would not work. This was a being that responded to patience, logic, and, strangely enough, humor. All right, Sira, he said during one long session. If you keep moving the controls away from me, I'm going to start charging you rent for this cockpit. The lights blinked rapidly. Kale laughed despite himself. It was almost as if Sira understood the joke. Over the next few days, Kale and Sira developed a rhythm. Kale would make a request. Sira would delay or block it, forcing Kale to think creatively. Eventually, Kale discovered a strange joy in the challenge. He was no longer just a banished pilot scraping by for parts. He was part of something unique, something that required every ounce of skill, every ounce of patience he had. One day, as he was testing the propulsion systems, a sudden alarm flashed across the cockpit. Kale's stomach dropped. The asteroid field had shifted during the ship's long sleep. Massive rocks were floating toward them, and the trajectory was deadly. Sira! We've got a problem, he shouted. We need to move, now! The ship pulsed in response. It seemed reluctant. The controls didn't respond the way they had in training. Kale tried every override, every command, but Sira's resistance was absolute. Panic rose in his chest. Then he remembered the first night, when the ship had spoken to him through his mind. Maybe it was time to try that connection again. Kale closed his eyes and concentrated. I need your help. We need to move, or we're done. Please, cooperate. A pulse of warmth filled his mind. The corridors aligned, the displays adjusted, and the ship's engines roared to life. Sira had listened. She had chosen to trust him, at least for now. The rocks crashed past them, some missing by mere centimeters. Kale's heart was racing, but he laughed breathless. You stubborn machine, he said. That was too close. Sira pulsed brightly, as if laughing back. From that moment, Kale realized something important. This was no ordinary vessel. It had intelligence, yes, but more importantly, it had instincts. And those instincts, while sometimes frustrating, were brilliant. Sira was not just a machine. She was a partner. The days turned into weeks. Kale and Sira explored small planets, navigated asteroid fields, and scavenged resources. Kale taught her human problem-solving, improvising repairs when parts were missing, finding alternate routes when systems failed. Sira, in turn, taught him alien technology. She revealed patterns in energy fields, shortcuts through gravitational anomalies, and ways to navigate safely in areas human maps could not even detect. Kale began to speak to her as if she were a crew member, not a machine.
Sira, what do you think about that?
Should we try the energy tunnel, or go around? The lights blinked in a rhythm that Kale began to understand. A kind of yes and no, opinion and warning. He laughed aloud. Finally, opinions! I knew you had them, you just needed the right listener. Yet, for all the bonding, Sira remained stubborn. She would refuse commands for reasons Kale couldn't always understand. Sometimes she would redirect him from an easy route, insisting on a more complicated path. Sometimes she would lock a panel just when he needed it most. Each time, Kale learned patience and creativity. Every small victory in understanding Syrah felt like a personal triumph. One evening, Kale floated outside the ship in a maintenance pod, working on an external fuel intake. Syrah pulsed gently, her lights casting soft colors across the pod. Kale smiled. "You know, Syrah, I think we make a good team, even if you are the most stubborn partner in the galaxy." The ship pulsed back, softly. It was not acknowledgement exactly, but it was close enough for Kale to feel satisfaction. Then came the first real test. As Kale navigated through an uncharted sector, the sensors detected a massive energy wave approaching. Not natural. It was artificial, structured, moving with intent. Kale realized instantly that someone, or something, was tracking them. "Syrah," he said, tension rising in his voice, "I need your advice. Do we try to hide or—" The ship pulsed sharply. Kale could feel the warning, the hesitation. She was anxious, which meant this wave was dangerous but also unknown. He decided to trust her instincts. "Okay, we follow your lead." Syrah shifted their course, guiding them through a narrow passage between two asteroid clusters. Kale gritted his teeth as the ship twisted and turned, every movement precise, calculated, and almost defiant. She refused the easier path, forcing Kale to follow her decision. The energy wave passed, missing them by kilometers. Kale exhaled slowly. "I don't know why we took that path, but thank you, I guess." The ship pulsed softly, almost like a smile. Kale realized something fundamental in that moment. Syrah was not just stubborn for the sake of it. She made decisions based on something he couldn't yet understand: experience, intuition, and a desire to protect. She had a mind of her own, and he had to respect it, not fight it. From that day on, the partnership changed. Kale stopped trying to control every movement. Instead, he communicated, suggested, and negotiated. Syrah responded in kind, learning from him as he learned from her. They were becoming a team, not just pilot and ship, but two beings learning trust, patience, and strategy together. Kale sat in the cockpit one night, staring at the stars streaking by as they traveled through hyperspace. He reflected on how much he had changed since discovering Syrah. He was no longer just a banished pilot scraping by for survival. He had a purpose, a mission, and a partner who challenged him, tested him, and, in her own way, respected him. "Syrah," he said quietly, "we make a strange pair. You, the stubborn alien ship. Me, the stubborn human. Somehow, I think we're going to do big things together." The ship pulsed in response, softer this time, more deliberate. Kale smiled. It wasn't agreement exactly, but it was enough. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a sentient being and a human pilot were learning to trust one another. They had survived storms, navigated hazards, and begun understanding each other's language, not of words, but of thought, instinct, and will. Kale leaned back in the cockpit, feeling a rare calm wash over him. There would be more tests, more challenges, and he knew better than to expect anything less from Syrah. But he also knew that together they could face anything the galaxy threw at them. And somewhere deep in Syrah's systems, the ship pulsed with the same realization. For the first time in centuries, she had found a companion worthy of her intelligence, curiosity, and stubbornness. Together, they were no longer just pilot and ship. They were partners. And the galaxy was about to learn that even the most stubborn beings, human or alien, could accomplish extraordinary things when they worked together. The galaxy stretched before Kale like an endless ocean of stars, and with Syrah at his side, it no longer felt lonely. The bond between human and ship had grown strong, forged in trust, patience, and countless small victories. Kale had learned to read the ship's pulsing lights and subtle vibrations as easily as he read the monitors. Syrah had learned to anticipate his improvisations and adapt. They had become a team. Yet, despite the harmony between them, the universe remained unpredictable. Kale adjusted the navigation panel, plotting a course through a cluster of uncharted planets. Syra pulsed softly, a warning that the route was risky. I know, Kale said, rubbing his eyes. But if we take the safe path, we'll spend months getting anywhere. I promise I'll be careful. The ship hesitated. The corridor wall shifted slightly, an alien sigh or expression of doubt. Kale smiled. Fine, you win. Let's compromise. We'll take a middle path, Syra responded with a gentle pulse. That was close enough. Their first stop was a small blue-green planet covered in dense forests and wide rivers. Its atmosphere was thin, but breathable. Sensors showed signs of life, but not intelligent life. Kale and Syra landed on a large plateau near a river delta. Kale stepped out of the cockpit, stretching his legs after the long journey. The air was crisp, fragrant with unknown vegetation. He looked back at Syra. You're lucky you don't need to breathe, he joked. Otherwise you'd have complained about this gravity change by now.
Syra pulsed in response, subtle but almost like a chuckle.
Kale wandered through the forest edge, scanning for resources and fuel sources. The planet was teeming with alien flora, some of which glowed faintly under the dim sunlight. Kale carefully collected samples, noting patterns, chemical compositions, and potential uses. Syra monitored him from above, her sensors mapping the terrain in ways Kale could not comprehend. See, he said aloud. Together we cover more ground than any solo team could. As they prepared to leave, Kale noticed something strange in the sensor readout. A hidden cave entrance, partially obscured by thick vines. Huh. You never know what you'll find, he muttered. Curiosity sparked. Let's check it out, he said. It could be valuable. Ancient tech, rare minerals. Who knows? Syra pulsed, hesitant. Kale understood this as caution. The cave was unstable, possibly dangerous. But Kale had learned to respect her instincts while gently nudging her. He carefully guided their exploration, moving slowly, letting Syra's sensors lead the way. Inside, the cave walls were smooth, almost polished, and covered in strange markings. Kale recognized some as mathematical symbols, others as entirely alien, patterns that seemed to convey information, but in a form he had never seen before. This isn't natural, he whispered. Someone built this, or something built it. Syra pulsed sharply, almost anxious. The ship's attention focused on the walls, scanning them in ways Kale could not understand. He realized this was more than a simple cave. It was a remnant of a civilization long gone. Hours passed as Kale documented what he could, recording patterns, sketches, and readings. Syra guided him carefully, shifting panels and displays to assist his work. Kale felt a growing sense of awe. He had always been fascinated by human ingenuity, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. As night fell on the alien planet, Kale sat near the cave entrance, looking at the stars. He spoke softly to Syra. You know, I never thought I'd see something like this. I mean, you in this place. It's incredible. Draven pulsed gently in response, and Kale felt a strange warmth. The ship's awareness was not just about survival or navigation. It was about understanding, curiosity, even appreciation. Their journey continued through strange worlds and systems. On one icy planet, Kale had to figure out how to land without crushing delicate crystalline formations that seemed almost alive. Syra guided him with precision, but only after Kale suggested multiple approaches, testing her reactions. On another planet with floating islands, Kale had to navigate strong magnetic storms. Every attempt to stabilize the ship failed until he combined human intuition with Syra's alien calculations. Together, they charted paths no one else could. Humor kept them grounded. On one particularly cramped asteroid, Kale tried to get Syra to lower the internal gravity so he could float and adjust the outer engines more easily. Instead, the ship increased gravity slightly, forcing him to cling to the hull. Kale laughed, frustrated but entertained. "You're impossible," he shouted. "Why do you hate me so much?" The ship pulsed in a bright pattern, and Kale decided it was laughter. He grinned. "Okay, fair enough. You win this round. Through these adventures, Kale realized something profound. Syra's stubbornness was not a flaw, it was her personality. She challenged him constantly, forcing him to think, adapt, and improve. He, in turn, had to respect her instincts, listen carefully, and negotiate. It was partnership in the purest form. One day, as they navigated a nebula filled with colorful gases and strange energy fluctuations, Kale's sensors picked up an abandoned space station. Its design was ancient, alien, and massive, far beyond anything Kale had ever seen. Syra pulsed sharply, more anxious than Kale had ever noticed before. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern tightening his chest. The ship's warning systems flared, not for danger, but for recognition. It was familiar with the station. Kale's pulse quickened. Syra's lights brightened, and for the first time, Kale felt something like fear radiate from the ship. Not anger, not frustration, fear. "I don't think we should just explore," Kale said quietly. You know something about it, don't you?" The ship pulsed again in rapid, almost erratic patterns. Kale realized she was communicating more directly now, trying to convey information beyond symbols and lights. He could sense urgency, caution, and a memory. A memory buried deep in her systems. Kale's mind raced.
Okay, we proceed carefully.
"You lead.
I follow.
No surprises." Agreed? The ship pulsed in a slow, deliberate rhythm. A yes. Landing on the station was delicate. Syra guided the Raven's wing through narrow docking corridors, avoiding collapsed sections and unstable surfaces. Kale felt the tension build with every move. The station felt alive, almost like it was watching them, waiting for something or someone. Inside, they discovered evidence of a civilization lost to time. Machinery long silent hummed faintly. Lights flickered as if remembering old commands. Symbols matched some of those Kale had seen on the cave planet. Clearly, there was a connection, an intelligence behind the design, perhaps even a purpose. Kale explored carefully, scanning every control panel, every corridor. Syra guided him, locking hazardous areas, opening safe paths, even redirecting environmental controls to make exploration easier. The trust between them had grown so deep that Kale no longer questioned her choices. He relied on them. As they reached the central chamber, Kale noticed an enormous crystalline interface glowing softly with an internal light. Syra pulsed urgently, almost frantic. Kale understood immediately. This was something important, something tied to the ship's history. "What is it?" he whispered, awed.
Is this your home? Your creator? The ship pulsed brightly, a rhythm Kale interpreted as a nod of recognition.
She had been here before, long ago, and the memory of it was stored deep within her systems. Kale felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Syra was not just a ship. They were explorers, uncovering the remnants of a civilization that had vanished, leaving behind puzzles and technology far beyond human understanding. Kale stepped closer to the interface, careful not to disturb its delicate balance. Symbols shifted under his touch, responding not to commands, but to understanding. The station seemed to test him, probing his mind for intent. He glanced at Syra. "I don't know if we're ready for this," he admitted. "But I think we have to try." Syra pulsed in agreement. She trusted him, and Kale knew, in that moment, he had to trust her in return. They began to interface with the station together, human intuition, alien intelligence, working in harmony. Patterns emerged, revealing information about the civilization's purpose, exploration, knowledge, and connection across the galaxy. The station was a hub, a beacon for explorers like them. Kale realized with a thrill he could barely contain that their journey had just begun. The galaxy was larger, stranger, and more mysterious than he had ever imagined. And with Syra, he could navigate it, not just survive, but thrive, explore, and learn. As they left the station and returned to the Raven's wing, Kale leaned back in the cockpit, exhaustion and excitement mingling. He spoke softly to Syra. "We've only scratched the surface. There's so much out there. And I think we're ready for it." Syra pulsed softly in response. Steady and calm, she was no longer just a stubborn ship resisting commands. She was a partner, a guide, a mind unlike any Kale had ever known. Together, they were explorers in a galaxy that had only just begun to reveal its secrets. For Kale the exile, the banished pilot, this was more than a journey. This was purpose, adventure, redemption. And with Syra at his side, he knew that the universe, with all its mysteries, had finally found someone ready to meet it. Kale Jarran stared out of the cockpit at the endless stars stretching across the galaxy. He had learned to read them, to feel their rhythm, and to navigate their dangers with Syra by his side. But despite all the discoveries and adventures, there was a lingering question in his mind. What exactly was Syra's purpose? Why had she been waiting so long for someone like him? The answer came sooner than he expected. They approached a massive energy field at the edge of a remote star system. Sensors lit up with readings Kale had never seen before. The field shimmered in colors he could not name, bending light and gravity in ways that made him dizzy. Syra pulsed urgently, faster than ever before, almost as if she were warning him. We are close. Kale took a deep breath. Close to what? What are we about to find? The ship pulsed again, this time with a rhythm Kale interpreted as encouragement. She trusted him. That was all he needed. Navigating into the energy field was tricky. The gravitational distortions twisted the ship like a toy. Kale's hands flew over the controls, but this time he did not force the ship. He moved with her, listening to her subtle signals, letting her guide the course. It was no longer about control. It was about trust. As they entered the heart of the field, the source revealed itself. A massive structure floating in space far larger than any station they had seen before. It was alive in design, organic and artificial at the same time, with flowing surfaces that shimmered like liquid metal. Energy coursed along its curves, pulsing like a heartbeat. Kale's breath caught. By the stars, this is incredible. Syra pulsed brighter, almost jubilantly. She had led him here. And Kale understood. This was her origin. Inside the structure, Kale and Syra explored corridors that seemed alive, walls shifting as they moved, guiding them to the central chamber. Kale could sense the history embedded in the architecture. Every curve, every pulse of light was part of a system designed to protect knowledge, to teach, and to test. In the central chamber, a massive crystalline interface floated above the floor, glowing softly. Kale approached cautiously. Symbols and patterns shifted beneath his gaze, reacting to his thoughts. Syra pulsed urgently, guiding him toward understanding rather than action. This is what you were built for, isn't it? Kale whispered. You weren't made to fight or to serve, but to explore, to learn, to connect. The ship pulsed again, rhythm steady, confirming. Kale could feel her pride, her purpose, her identity. He reached out and touched the crystalline interface. A wave of understanding filled his mind. Not words, but images, feelings, knowledge. The structure had been a hub for explorers across the galaxy. Civilizations had come here to share discoveries, to exchange wisdom, and then vanished. Syra had been waiting for someone worthy to continue that mission. Kale realized the truth. This was more than a ship. But Syra was a key. Together, they could unlock knowledge that would benefit countless worlds, and maybe even humanity itself. The realization hit him with a weight he could not ignore. So, this is it, Kale said. This is our purpose. Not just survival, not just exploration, but something bigger, something that matters. Syra pulsed gently in response, a steady rhythm that Kale felt in his chest. It was trust, affirmation, and perhaps a hint of pride.
Kale took a deep breath. Then let's do it.
Together. Over the following weeks, Kale and Syra worked in harmony with the structure. Kale learned to interface with its systems through Syra, combining human intuition with alien logic. They discovered maps of uncharted systems, histories of civilizations long vanished, and technologies that could revolutionize travel, medicine, and energy. Syra guided him carefully, sometimes refusing to open certain areas until Kale demonstrated understanding, patience, or problem-solving skills. Her stubbornness, which had once frustrated him, now felt like a necessary discipline. Kale had grown into it. He had grown into her world, and she into his. At night, Kale would sit in the cockpit staring at the stars, reflecting on his journey. He had been banished, alone, and forgotten. Now, he had purpose, adventure, and a partner unlike any other. He thought of the fleet, of the worlds he had left behind, and a quiet smile touched his lips. Maybe he had been banished for a reason, to find this, to find Syra, to discover the greater role waiting for him. Not all moments were easy. Some systems resisted, some paths were dangerous, and Kale occasionally faltered under the weight of responsibility. But Syra was patient, guiding him through every challenge, sometimes testing him, sometimes supporting him. On one particularly delicate task, Kale had to realign a massive energy conduit that powered part of the structure. One miscalculation could destroy the entire hub. He hesitated, hand shaking. Syra pulsed beside him, a subtle rhythm that reminded him he was not alone. Together, they had survived worse. Taking a deep breath, Kale proceeded. He worked with care, listening to Syra's subtle signals, adjusting as she guided. The conduit aligned perfectly. Energy pulsed through the hub, stabilizing it. Kale laughed aloud, relief flooding him. "We did it!" "I couldn't have done it without you, Syra." The ship pulsed brightly, almost a burst of joy. Kale felt warmth spread through the cockpit. For the first time, he understood fully what it meant to be a partner. Not master or servant, but equals in thought, action, and purpose. The next phase of their mission came naturally. Kale and Syra began to explore the galaxy systematically, seeking out remnants of lost civilizations, gathering knowledge, and ensuring that nothing valuable was lost. Each new system was a puzzle, each discovery a triumph. Kale's ingenuity and adaptability complemented Syra's experience, intelligence, and instincts perfectly. Humor remained part of their partnership. Kale often joked about her stubbornness while she responded with subtle pulses that made him laugh. They had developed a language, not of words but of trust, timing, and understanding. Through it all, Kale's confidence grew. He had once been a banished, lonely pilot. Now, he was a discoverer, a keeper of knowledge, a partner to a sentient being unlike any other. He realized the galaxy was no longer a place of exile and isolation. It was a playground for curiosity, a vast laboratory for learning, and a stage for human creativity. One day, as they passed through a quiet star system, Kale paused in the cockpit, watched a small planet below, its surface glowing faintly with natural light. "Syra, I think we've changed," he said softly. "We're not the same as we were when we first met. You've taught me patience, trust, and understanding. Have taught you to see human ingenuity and creativity. Together, we're stronger than either of us alone." The ship pulsed in response, steady and affirming. Kale felt a bond deeper than any he had known, a partnership born not of necessity, but of respect, trust, and shared purpose. He smiled. "You know, I think this is only the beginning. There's so much to explore, so much to discover, and I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else." Syra pulsed brightly, almost a laugh, almost a nod. Kale understood completely. They were ready. Together they could face any mystery, any challenge, any unknown world. Months passed. Kale and Syra became legends among fringe traders, explorers, and exiles. Tales spread of the banished human pilot and his sentient ship, a duo who could navigate the most dangerous and mysterious regions of space, uncover lost civilizations, and return with knowledge that no one else could understand. But fame was not their goal. Kale's purpose had transformed. He was no longer seeking redemption or survival. He was seeking understanding, growth, and partnership. And with Syra, he had found it. One evening, Kale rested in the cockpit, letting the stars streak past in hyperspace. He spoke quietly to Syra. "You know, when I found you, I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe I thought I wanted parts, maybe adventure. But I've realized what I needed was a partner. Someone who challenges me, guides me, and trusts me in return. That's you, Syra. That's always been you. The ship pulsed gently, a rhythm Cale felt in his chest. It was pride, trust, and perhaps affection. Cale smiled, feeling the weight of the universe and the lightness of belonging all at once. Together, they charted new systems, mapped lost civilizations, and preserved knowledge that might otherwise have been forgotten. The galaxy was vast, mysterious, and endlessly beautiful, and Cale, the once banished pilot, had found his place within it. For Cale and Syra, the journey was not just about exploration, it was about partnership, understanding. The galaxy was no longer a place of exile. It was a canvas, waiting for their shared story. And somewhere deep in the pulsing lights of the sentient ship, Cale knew one thing for certain. Together, they had truly become unstoppable.